Welcome to episode 19 of Coach's Corner.
Oh,
I am
snap.
your host, Justin Scollard,
The man himself.
the man, the myth, the legend, the international man of mystery.
Hmm.
And who are you?
The
man.
intrepid time traveler. No, I am Ethan Wolf.
And today we got a juicy little nugget of, we're going to be talking about glucose monitors,
Oh, yeah.
which really is a conversation of how important is it that your glucose levels spike or don't spike post-meal.
Yeah, what is there value?
Like, is there value to
Is there
this?
concern? Is wearing a monitor necessary?
Because I think if you're wearing a glucose monitor, you're concerned that there must be an inherent belief that you have that having elevated levels of glucose is dangerous. And it is.
Yeah.
And it is.
100%. Oh, yeah, that there's some value to measuring all the time.
As long as if you're like a population who has like insulin sensitivity or resistance, you are pre-diabetic or diabetic, then yeah, you know what? Like maybe that would be a good idea. But I think that what we want to kind of dig into in this episode is like, is it important? Is it necessary to wear this thing? What is this information actually telling us? So I eat a lunch with a tortilla and some rice and some beans and my blood sugar levels spike. Like, what information does that tell us that we can actually apply to our life, and how necessary is that in the grand scheme of things? So that's what we're going to be trying to dig into and unravel for you guys
Pop trend, they're everywhere.
today. Yeah.
You know?
And why should you care? Why should you listen to us? Well, we've got about 20 years of experience each. So 40 years total.
That's right. You got to clump that number together.
We have a combined 40
Exactly.
years experience.
With a combined
We've been trainers for a long time, all the certs. Ethan went to school for this stuff. We've been applying it hands-on every single day for 20 years.
Yep,
Every single day.
It's been our career.
Sole career is
That's right.
nutrition, exercise, weight loss, muscle building, you name it. Ethan and I have owned gyms together.
That's right.
Ethan currently has a studio here in Los Angeles. I currently have a business online, but we're both actively coaching and working with people on this stuff.
That's right.
And so, I would say that we're qualified to at least have a discussion on what one should do.
Share our opinions and our
Yeah.
ability to kind of look at the science of things.
So what's your take? What's your first impression when you first started seeing on Instagram or YouTube people popping these like glucose monitors on and like, showing their results after they ate lunch and stuff?
It's like when I first saw them come on the scene, I was kind of like, oh, that's neat. Like, I wanted like almost like a curiosity of like, oh, that's cool. Like that could be valuable information. Or like, there's some part of me that was curious about just like in the flash. But, just when you think about it, I think it's a little silly. I fundamentally think that, they used to be only available through prescription to get the continuous glucose monitor, the CGM they call them. But now you can get them over the counter. And, really what I see now is just a bunch of companies profiteering off of a fad and creating, this value, creating like an idea of a value set that isn't really necessary.
Right. It's funny you say that because I had the same thought. I actually made some notes on it here. It's like any good marketer,
Of course,
you
yeah.
create a problem.
Yes.
You create the fear
Create
around
a
it.
reason you're fixing something.
And you just so happen to sell a solution.
Exactly. All these pictures of like, a woman in the gym, you're clearly getting her workout on, like putting a glucose monitor on her arm. And it's just like, oh, that's looking healthy. That can help me, and it's fundamentally, I think it's just a little silly, I think.
Well, and I think of a video of some guy and he's sitting there with a Chipotle burrito. So like I was saying earlier, it's like, okay, so he's got this burrito, which is a calorie bomb. I mean, I think like a Chipotle burrito is like 1,500 calories.
At least 1,000.
Yeah, like hopefully that's those occasions are few and far between, unless you're like a super skinny young guy trying to put on size.
If
Like,
that's half your meal, if that's half your day's worth
yeah,
of food,
right.
you
But
know,
it's tough to get through a full one of those.
it
And
is. No, if you do,
you know,
you're done. You're sitting down.
yeah, that's like.
it's-
Oof. But anyway, so the video is this guy, and he's got the glucose monitor on, and he had just finished his Chipotle burrito, and then he shows his levels, and he goes, "See, blood sugar levels are spiked," and it's just like, yo, well, no. My thing was like, no shit. Like, duh. You just
Right.
ate what, 2 cups of rice and a big flour
yeah,
tortilla.
like,
and
you mean there was
beans? Like,
carbohydrates in your meal?
because
Oh.
there's carbohydrates in the meal.
Yeah, like, oh no.
But like, think about animals. We're an animal. Like this is what happens when we come across food.
Yes.
We eat very few and far between. And like, if we eat a meal, so we're awake for 16 hours. We probably, each meal takes us 7 to 12 minutes to consume. So we're eating for maybe 20 minutes total of
7
eating time,
minutes,
right?
Yeah.
And so
100%.
it's like, well, it stands to reason then there's going to be blood sugar and glucose in our bloodstream after we consume, because we have to eat enough in these little tiny intervals to sustain us for a 16, 24-hour day.
It's just how things work.
So it just to me, yeah, same with you. It's just like, what are you like? Is anyone surprised that your blood sugar levels are higher after you eat?
That is really what's interesting, is the demonization of just having a glucose spike. And I think, we'll get into that later, of like, the physiological effects and what's going on a little bit. But it's interesting because, kind of like you're saying, it's like, this is just how the body works. We have mechanisms and processes that are built into us to process carbohydrate and get it into our body to use for fuel or store it for later. It's just physiologically what happens and has always been happening. And just because it's like, when did the natural processes of the body become so villainized?
Yeah.
In a way.
Right.
It's confusing to me, because it's, to your point, it's like, oh, I ate a burrito with carbohydrates. Look, my blood glucose is going up. And it's like, yes, because when you break down carbohydrates, it's reduced to glucose, and glucose is what enters your bloodstream.
See, when you eat, yeah, exactly.
Like, that's
Because
how that works. It's like
carbohydrates are glucose, and then glucose turns into blood sugar, and then if your body's working, and I think the caveat, and I think what we're gonna enter into here is assuming we're a healthy individual.
Yeah.
Now, if you're unhealthy, you have diabetes or pre-diabetic, you're chronically sleep deprived, or some version of that, then yeah, you know what, maybe this wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to keep an eye on that.
Right. Well, I think that's the thing to consider, is that, like I said, it used to be with the prescription only. And so, like, you can kind of consider this a medical device.
Right.
And the purpose of this medical device is to monitor your blood sugar for people that are diabetic. And then I think pre-diabetes would kind of qualify to that, because that has to be externally regulated. You have to inject insulin to make sure that you regulate your blood sugar. And if you don't do that naturally, like most of us do that don't have diabetes, then there's really not a reason. But it's a medical device that absolutely has a purpose, and it's for people that are diabetic, because they need to know what their blood sugar is and how much insulin and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, it sure beats like pricking your finger with a needle and having to do that 3
Yeah,
times
no,
a day.
to the
So, I mean,
technology is amazing. You get
Yeah.
direct live feedback, and I think for people with those metabolic conditions, it's amazing. It's completely what's necessary, and it's an amazing tool to use. And I'm sure it helps people participate with diabetes much more efficiently versus a blood prick test. And plus,
Totally.
you don't gotta like prick your finger all the time.
and also, like, I think like blood sugar levels and blah blah blah. Psychology is very binary. Like we like, our minds operate in a very binary way. Okay, blood sugar level bad, low.
Right.
Blood sugar good, but not necessarily. It depends on the individual, right? Because if you're training and you're like performing at anything, whether it be martial arts or weights or endurance training or whatever,
Sport.
you can, like, you would just be better off if you ate more carbohydrate, and that might mean that post meal your blood sugar levels might be higher than they would maybe 2, 3, 4 hours later. So it's all relative. Like, if you're an endurance cyclist, 600-700 grams of carbohydrates a day is not uncommon. If you're a professional bodybuilder, 700-800 grams of carbohydrate a day is not uncommon, because you're using it.
It's fuel.
Right?
I mean, if as we've talked about, it's like fats
Right.
and carbohydrates are the primary fuel sources for the body. Carbohydrates are going to be those ones that are used for anything that has some form of intensity, as an easy way to look at it.
Think about it like this, right? Okay, so think of like carbohydrate is like gas in your car.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
So if I told you, dude, I put 3 tanks of gas in my car a week, and you'd be like, what? Like, I barely get through 1 tank a month.
Right.
We would just assume that means that I drive more than you.
Yeah.
Because obviously I'm not just sitting there
You're using the fuel
pumping the gas while it's pouring out of
onto
the
the
tank.
sidewalk. Yes.
Right?
100%.
I'm using it up. I'm burning that fuel. And that's kind of how people with glucose need to look at this too, or people with blood sugar and carbohydrate intake need to look at this too. Like if you're like running and then maybe going to like a martial arts class 3 times a week and then lifting 4 or 5 days a week and walking 10,000 steps every day, then 400 grams of carbohydrate would probably be pretty appropriate. But if you are sedentary and don't exercise, like that might be crazy high blood sugar levels for someone else who's sedentary. And so it's so relative to understand that like blood glucose depends on the person. It's relative.
Well, and I would say even that, though, fundamentally, if it's a healthy individual with no issues with insulin sensitivity, even if they overconsume carbohydrate, it's just going to get stored as fat.
Right.
It's not like it's going to just float around in your blood if you're not using it, right? So you might have your endurance athlete that can utilize all that carbohydrate.
Yeah.
You might have somebody sedentary that is going to utilize it by fat storage for later.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like just because they're not an athlete that they're like overeating carbohydrate and it's just like, oh, just high blood sugar levels all day. You know, we had the efficiency of the process is still there. It just won't get used for performance. It'll just be stored as fat.
Right. Exactly. Good clarification on that for sure.
Yeah, because it's one of those things. It's like, I think, again, it's just all the natural processes of the body. So I guess just in case, let's talk about the physiology a little bit. Let's break it down just in case people aren't quite sure. We ran by it real quick. But the idea is that when you eat carbohydrate, whether it's a complex carb or a fructose or a sugar, whatever, it only enters the bloodstream as glucose is the easy way to think about that. And that's your blood sugar level. In response to blood sugar, insulin is released. I'm sure you've all heard of insulin. And insulin is a storage hormone. Hence, it pulls the blood sugar out of the blood.
But not just carbohydrates released. It pulls all calories.
All calories, yeah. Yes, it is. But you know, it's in this context, we'll talk about it through blood sugar, and then it stores it in your muscles as glycogen, which is a stored form of carbohydrate, as well as your liver, which holds a lot of glycogen. And then, you know, as we've talked about, it's like you can look at it as a bucket, and once the buckets of the glycogen are full, and the water spills over, the water that spills over gets stored as fat, because again, our body does not like to waste calories. It doesn't want to die and starve. It's been a long time that we have been living in a severe deficit because we didn't have modern day food surplus. And
we were starving for 99% of human existence.
Yeah, exactly. So it gets stored as fat to be saved for later. And so that's the general process. And so as insulin pulls that nutrition out of your blood sugar drops. And that is kind of the very simplified kind of idea of the blood sugar spike and drop.
So where it can go wrong then, just so we can kind of take this to its logical conclusion, I guess biological conclusion, is assuming the drain matches the faucet, meaning however much carbohydrate you're consuming or calories in general you're consuming, as long as the drain matches that and you're exerting yourself, you're walking, you're lifting weights, then it's all relative and, you know, it's an even ratio.
Yeah, your muscles are getting rid of it through movement and exercise, and then they get filled back up.
But let's just say that you stop the movement, you clog the drain, so to speak, and you're more sedentary now, but the faucet keeps going, you're still eating, you're still consuming that much, then immediately what will happen is your liver, your glycogen stores in your muscles, they're full.
Yep.
And then eventually instead of going into your muscles, your body will start making fat deposits through insulin receptors in your fat cells. Then eventually those get tapped. And eventually what happens is the muscle insulin receptors are tapped and they start to wither away because they're no longer needed. And that's just the way that it works. Use it or lose it. It's a law in fitness. One of the first things we learn as trainers. Yeah. Use it or lose it. So if we're not needing these insulin receptors on our muscles anymore because our muscles are constantly full with glycogen, there's just no need to pull more glycogen into the muscle. Then they start to fade away.
Emptying the bucket.
And then what ends up happening is become hyperinsulinemic, right? Where now there's like all this insulin in our system, but there's nowhere to go because the muscles are saying we're tapped, the liver's like we're done,
Exactly. Yeah.
fat cells are full, and then that's when we start to develop type 2 diabetes.
Yeah.
right?
So yeah, exactly. So basically, as those receptors start to die out, the insulin's still flowing around, but you become less insulin sensitive because the insulin has nowhere to
There's
go.
less receptors.
There's less receptors. And so that's the whole idea of insulin sensitivity. And as that insulin sensitivity goes down, meaning your body is less participatory with the insulin that's floating, then you start getting out of pre-diabetic, and then there we go.
Yeah, and you got extra glucose in your bloodstream. And so I think that if we think about where this idea originated of like, okay, blood glucose is bad, insulin is bad, it's because to its extreme,
Yes.
as with anything in life,
Yep.
it's dangerous because more of what it signifies, in and of itself, it's benign. It is what it is.
It's just your
we
body's
need it.
physiological processes to
But what
assimilate
it-
food.
But if my 24-hour baseline blood sugar levels are elevated, which
Yes.
is the true test, not immediately after you eat a meal, but the true test is a 24-hour baseline. It can spike, but does it go down?
Yes.
And if it doesn't go down, it's not because the carbohydrate you ate was evil.
yeah.
It's because there's a lack of insulin sensitivity,
Yes,
and
your-
there's nowhere for it to go.
Your
And
body
so
doesn't care
that's-
that there's insulin floating around.
Yeah, and so that's the problem.
Yep. And so I think that is probably where the perceived value of the monitors came into play, is that consistently elevated blood glucose is bad news. No doubt about it.
Right.
So
But it's not because of the blood glucose. It's not because
it's
of
not,
the
yeah, but it's not
glucose.
because glucose is bad or
Right.
carbohydrates are bad. It's because your organism is kind of out of whack for some reason, right? Some people are born with diabetes, but type 2 is acquired. And in some faculty, in a nutshell, you're pretty much just not moving enough, or you're eating too much.
Or both.
Or both.
Yeah.
But in this context, what we're talking about it with the drain is that you're just not moving enough. You're not using your muscles. You're not taking a walk. You're not exercising. You're not breaking a sweat. You're fundamentally sedentary in the textbook definition. It's like if you have a car that sits in the garage for a year and you go to turn it on, it's probably not going to turn on. You haven't used it. So it's one of those things that it is the use it or lose it situation. And so it's really just a reflection, I think, of physical activity.
And that's the first thing that anyone will tell somebody who's pre-diabetic is you got to just move. And in fact, you can be very metabolically fit still, even if you're heavier. But if you just build some lean muscle mass and you exercise, like I think we've talked about this in a previous episode, but basically, you could take somebody with the exact same BMI. Let's just say person A is 250 pounds and 5'10", and then person B is 250 pounds and 5'10". But person A lifts weights 3 or 4 days a week, walks 10,000 steps, and maybe even does a little cardio, versus person B who is the same BMI but is sedentary.
And let's just say they're eating the same amount of calories.
Yeah, control
too.
for
They're at
calories.
maintenance, so neither of them are losing or gaining weight.
Yeah, they're just right there. But the difference is that person A probably has more muscle in their extremities,
Absolutely.
less visceral body fat, because even though they're consuming a lot of food, even though they're eating a lot, and they're clearly obese as far as a BMI standard would go, the fact is that they're keeping their channel cleared. And what I mean by that is the channel through which we consume food and process, assimilate, and then expel.
Yep.
We're clearing that
The
channel
system
constantly.
is flowing. The drain
Yeah,
is open. You empty, you refill it. You
and
empty,
so
you
even though this
refill it.
person's bigger and could be healthy if they lost weight objectively, but is probably going to live a fine life and be metabolically fit versus the other person who has the same BMI and weight but doesn't move at all because it's stagnant.
Yeah,
right.
absolutely. And so avoiding insulin sensitivity is really going to come down to, yes, how much food you eat, because if you don't introduce a lot of carbohydrate, you're not going to overload it. But fundamentally, you want those receptors on your muscles to be able to grab on to the insulin and the nutrients it's carrying with it.
Right. So this also presupposes, I think, too, that then is lower carb better, or slower carb, as like a Tim Ferriss would say, where it's more like carbohydrates that are lower on the glycemic index. So you have like, white rice, white bread, sugar. Those are like high glycemic index kind of carbohydrates. Then you have like beans and quinoa and I don't know, maybe like Ezekiel bread or something like that. That's lower on the glycemic index. And the idea here is that the more fibrous and the more complex a carbohydrate is, the slower it's going to release in your bloodstream, which means you're not going to get the crazy insulin spikes. Versus if all you ever ate was like what we would call refined or processed carbohydrates that are higher in the glycemic index, then when you eat it, it's going to spike your blood sugar levels faster. And that's the argument here for why glucose monitors, so you can make sure that you avoid foods that spike your blood sugar.
Yeah, and I think there's complexities to this because in one sense, if you were to consume, so again, we talked about that once the glycogen stores are full, it gets stored as fat. And so in some capacity, I think if you were to eat 200 grams of white bread, and let's say you have some room in your muscles, but not 200 grams worth of carbohydrate in your muscles, and your blood sugar spikes, and so there's all 200 grams trying to get in, no fiber, no protein, just 200 grams of carbohydrate and white bread. Your muscles only have so much to take in, and in that moment, there's going to be leftover calories that will inevitably be stored as fat in that moment because they're not being used. Whereas if you ate 200 grams worth of lentils, which have protein and fiber with them, like just same way a steak is digested and protein assimilated over time. You don't just assimilate all the grams of protein in a steak. That the blood sugar would be more even, and if let's say you're living your life and the muscles are slowly emptying with glycogen, they can be kind of slowly refilled with glycogen, and you don't necessarily have fat storage from this acute moment of too much carbohydrate at one time. Now that conversation is kind of a nuance because fundamentally, if you're in a calorie deficit or in calorie maintenance, it really isn't going to matter.
Exactly. Because whatever micro deposit of adipose tissue, fat you might experience from that one meal, it gets kind of evened out in the wash over the course of that day. If you burn 2,000 and you only end up eating 1,800, then it doesn't matter how much you spiked in any one meal, because once in the wash, it's all going to net out to where you're still in a calorie deficit.
Exactly.
And whatever fat you had deposited is going to be then mobilized and burned again.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so, it's like, because I do think that there is value to eating fibrous foods. And I do think, I heard a description of that, like you want your blood sugar levels to be like rolling hills. Mm-hmm. That there's going to be peaks and valleys to them, but that you want them as rolling hills, and that mountain ranges aren't as optimal as a rolling hill, right? So that extreme spikes and then extreme, deficits of your blood sugar isn't necessarily going to be optimal. But in the grand scheme of things, that's going to still, in my opinion, come secondary to total calories consumed and your movement level.
Totally.
You know?
Yeah. And also, like, what is the objective that you're going for too? Like, are you trying to lose weight? Because I think hunger management is one of the biggest struggles for folks trying to lose weight.
Yes.
Because if you're trying to lose weight, then hopefully we all understand you have to be in a calorie deficit. You got to eat less food. And if you're used to eating a lot and then you go and you eat a little, it's tough. You feel it. You get cranky, you get tired, you want to take a nap. So food choice in that regard is super important. So if you did start eating more lentils and quinoa and Ezekiel breads and these type of things.
And just vegetables.
And lots of veggies.
Full of fiber, but low calorie.
So right now, I'm on, I went from 3,800 calories a day and now I'm at 2,300. So I pulled 1,500 calories off within the last couple of weeks. And like when you're eating 3,800 because your goal is to try to build muscle, then you kind of have to go for the simple carbohydrates. You kind of have to go for
there's a degree,
because it's just too hard to just chew all that food.
You're never going to fit that many lentils.
But then when you flip it around and now I'm in a fat loss phase, now it's like, man, I got to stay away from the simple carbohydrates. It's only going to be the quinoa and the lentils and that kind of thing, because I can eat a lunch that's like 500 calories loaded with these complex carbohydrates, and I'm satiated. Like I feel completely fine for hours, and that's the objective.
Yes.
That's the thing we've all heard a million people say, but it's so true. And so that's the benefit of like eating carbohydrates that are lower in the glycemic index, especially if you're trying to lose weight, is
Absolutely.
it does, to Ethan's point, those rolling hills are an analogy to your energy levels.
Absolutely. And because one of the things that actually induces hunger and the hunger hormones is low blood sugar.
Yep.
So it's one of those things that if you did eat a completely fiberless lump of white bread, you are going to spike your blood sugar. It's going to come down pretty quick because insulin's going to do its job. And then fundamentally, your blood sugar will be low again sooner, and then that will potentially induce hunger. So it's not like food choices don't matter in their effect of blood sugar, but one, it's the cliches of eat whole fibrous foods, right? I mean, or just eat whole foods, eat some vegetables. You know, I don't think you have to go down to like the nitty gritty science of your exact blood sugar level. But also, you know, so it's in that capacity. But fundamentally, I think what we're saying is that an average person that has no medical condition doesn't really need to have that specificity of information.
Agreed.
Right. So there's nuances to all of this, but I think I'll speak for both of us that the fundamental takeaway is that it's adding unnecessary detail and metrics into your life that you don't really need. Mm-hmm. You know, and the observation of your blood sugar rising is literally just what's supposed to happen.
Because
exactly, because that is how our bodies work.
Exactly. And like, think about it. Like, let's just go back to that Chipotle example, right? So maybe you, excuse me. So let's go back to that Chipotle example. So like, maybe that burrito is 1,500 calories. And maybe your nutritionist, your coach says, hey, I need you at 1,800 calories right now.
Right.
And you had your coffee and maybe like a protein shake, and then the day just blew the fuck up in your face, and next thing you know, it's 6 p.m. and you're like, oh my God, I haven't eaten anything. I only had 300 calories from my coffee and my protein shake this morning, and I'm starving. Will that Chipotle burrito spike your glucose levels? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Does it also just so happen to perfectly fit into your calorie targets for the day that you know you need to eat over the long haul consistently?
Over the 24-hour period, over day after day?
So if you ate that and you hit your numbers, even if it spiked your blood sugar more and maybe you even had a little food come after, at the end of the day, like, consistency is so important. And that's the objective in that example. That would be probably a wise choice. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a condition that I cannot remember the name of it right now, but it's something like hypoglycemic. Right? So hypoglycemic people are people that have low blood sugar in a bad way, so opposite of high blood sugar, and it can cause blurred vision and crash, can't operate machinery, all types of odd stuff. But there's a condition that is for people that aren't actually hypoglycemic, but it's a temporary state of hypoglycemia that comes after eating food. And so basically you eat food, your blood sugar goes up, insulin's released, pulls it all out, and you fall into what would be considered a hypoglycemic range. I forget what it's called, but it exists. And so it's like a condition. And I thought that would be the case from the example I gave before of consuming a lot of carbohydrate without much fiber or anything of that nature, and it would happen very quickly. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying it doesn't. I couldn't find any research to say that it doesn't happen in that situation, and I could see it, and I think that's what sometimes can cause people to crash if they have a bunch of sugar on an empty stomach or something like that. But fundamentally, all of the science and references I talked about was saying that it normally happens 4 hours after a large meal. So that the large meal introduces a lot of nutrition into your body, and you're working on it and you're working on it, and you've had some type of probably consistent blood sugar or higher blood sugar. You've had some rolling hills, and then all of a sudden the insulin does its job and pulls it all out, and all of a sudden you're hypoglycemic. Your blood sugar is too low, and so I was like, oh, that's interesting. 4 hours after a meal doesn't seem to fit any type of narrative of like, oh, well, lentils or not, it was just very interesting to me.
Yeah, right.
And so then I was looking into solutions to this because I was like, okay, well, this is something where maybe blood sugar would matter. And, it was every kind of cliche, like eat a serving of fruit every day, eat 1 to 3 servings of vegetables every day, make sure you have protein in your meals.
God, I know.
And do your best to choose whole food carbohydrates. Well, okay.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
It's funny because that's just all you ever like. It's so funny like researching these episodes because you and I we want to be able to tell people something different.
Yeah, so I actually was looking into that as a justification for having the monitor. I was trying to find a legitimate reason for a non-diabetic individual to have the monitor, but I don't think that condition really affects that many people. I mean, look, we've all eaten lunch and crashed after lunch.
Yeah.
I know it's happened to me. And I think that certain foods probably will contribute to that more or less. But in terms of body composition, that won't matter as much. But I couldn't even find really any legitimate reason for a non-diabetic person to have it. I was looking.
Yeah, because like at the end of the day, it's like also we gotta like we gotta profile the archetype here. Like, is the person who's who's conscious and proactive to the point where they're gonna purchase a glucose monitor and be checking it? Is that the type of person that's going to also be then binging on processed carbohydrates to the point to where it's going to put them into like a state of diabetic state? Probably not.
Probably not. But you also have those people that are of the mindset of, oh, well, this will fix everything, or this is the information I need, and a pseudo kind of delusion that this one piece of information will make the changes happen that they need. And it's that kind of delusion I also find that are people that aren't they're focusing on the wrong thing, like maybe adding a fifth workout when you've had 10 drinks in a day.
Yeah,
right. So that person thinks that fifth workout in the week's going to make all the difference,
but they're putting 40 drinks down every week.
Yeah,
it's like,
so
no.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like, oh, the blood glucose monitor or measuring my heart rate during a workout, that's going to make sure my workouts are the what I need.
Well, exactly, and that kind of goes into just like self-quantification in general.
Yes, I remember you had that client that would always be like, "Oh, I'm falling out of my heart rate zone.
I'm not in the zone anymore." It's
like, well, we're doing resistance training.
Yeah, dude.
You don't need your heart rate to be at a certain place. You're not an endurance athlete training for an endurance event or
you're just a 50-year-old man who's frail and needs to put on muscle, and so we're going to be doing some strength training that requires a 2-minute rest between every set. So
yeah, it's interesting. One of the reasons I saw that from might want it is a sense of control. That having the information might give them a sense of control, even if they take no immediate action. And I'm like, I guess that's a reason. Like, I don't know.
I don't want to actually control anything. I just want to have a sense of it.
Right.
But this is kind of my point. It's like, what are you going to do with that information now?
Yeah.
Because life is dynamic. Life is in the grays. It's not so cut and dry. And like, okay, back to my scenario, my case study of like the person who just has a small little breakfast and then just gets really busy with work, and then all of a sudden it's 7 p.m. and they need to hit their calorie targets. Mm-hmm. If they were by the book strict on their glucose monitor, they probably wouldn't make that choice to have a big meal, because in their mind, it's more important to keep your glucose levels down than it is to just hit your nutrient numbers for the day.
Right.
And so it's like, this is where self-quantification can really sabotage us, because if we're too reactionary on all these various metrics, and don't get me wrong, I think we should track a few good things consistently, but like heart rate variability, recovery percentages, blood glucose levels, it's like, to what end? And like, what do we know big picture? Okay, so you can get caught up in the weeds and you're but like, you just punch out a few levels, and what's most important is your consistency. Some days you're going to sleep poorly. Other days you're going to have to skip lunch and have a bigger dinner. Other days you're going to still be sore from your last workout, but you got to work out today because you might not get another chance for a few days.
And maybe you take it. Maybe you lift lighter that day. You know, it's not that you don't do it. Maybe it's not that you have to be rigid.
Right.
Maybe you take it a little easy. Maybe you focus on body weight movements and do a little more stretching, but you still show up to the gym.
Yeah.
You still do your thing.
Yeah, because it's like, okay, my Whoop watch said that I'm only 40% recovered, so I might as well skip my workout today.
Oh, that Whoop watch.
Or I might as well sleep in, even though I told myself I'm going to get up early every day.
Yeah.
So it's like you break these rituals and commitments that you've made with yourself that actually, in the long term, make you a better person because of some micro data in the moment that gives you this impression that something's happening, but it's such an acute scenario that it doesn't necessarily dictate long-term outcomes. Because if you can make the argument like this, Well, exercise increases your blood pressure in the moment, releases more cortisol, and releases oxidation or causes oxidation.
Yeah, causes
Those are
oxidation.
all bad things.
Negative.
But what happens if you exercise regularly is that you experience an acute dosage of, some sort of negative perceived thing, but then the adaptation makes you a stronger, more resilient person
What doesn't kill you makes you stronger
to some extent.
to some extent.
But that's the idea. That's my issue with too much self-quantification.
Well, and I think that's the thing, right? It's not black or white, because metrics and data are important. I know we both tell our clients that, we can't manage what you don't measure, and there are certain things that provide high value. I think scale, steps, exercise frequency, and even maybe like heart rate, I would be something that could have some type of insight that could be valuable, that's easily accessible, that you could just measure yourself. So I think quantifying certain aspects of our life are going to have a big bang for your buck, and that they'll make a big difference when you start to pay attention to them.
Yep.
And then after that, it really is getting nitty gritty to a degree that I think the average individual doesn't need to go there. Right? Are there people that might be able to like really maximize sport performance by monitoring their blood glucose, or crash all the time from eating certain foods, and then find out that if they eat 4 or 5 small meals throughout the day, if they can, versus 2 big ones, they don't crash as much, and they witness that somehow on their CGM, fine, so be it. But I think most of the population just doesn't need to go there, and you're just adding unnecessary numbers to your mind to filter through and interpret and assign value to.
And then make judgment calls on your own practices around your own health because of these metrics that may or may not mean anything.
Yep.
The end of the day, it's your 24-hour baseline glucose numbers that you need to see, period.
Right. Fasted glucose test.
Yeah. Now, obviously, make good food choices. Eat your fruits and
Always.
veggies. Eat
Yes.
protein.
Eat whole
make
foods.
good complex carbohydrate
Yes.
choices. But
Stay
also,
away from processed and ultra processed foods,
Yeah.
right? It's
but no matter what, just don't be surprised if your blood sugar levels spike after you eat a meal, because that's what your body's supposed to do.
it's how it works.
Because that blood sugar level then signals to your insulin to get released, and then the insulin then puts it where it needs to be. And as long as you're taking care of what you need to be taking care of, as far as getting out for a walk, lifting some weights, doing some training, getting good sleep,
gardening, something.
let your body do what it does.
Yep.
This is a million years of evolution. This is 5,000 years of evolution.
I was about to say, man. No. That's pretty good. Well, it's interesting because in relation to previous episodes we talked about with social media, it's ripe on social media. So you have companies advertising, creating a value for it, or making us think that there's a value for it. But you also have social media fitness influencers and health food gurus and all these individuals on social media latching on to this kind of fad that's hot in the zeitgeist and getting clicks and views. And it's like, I wonder sometimes if they really believe this, because you see these people, like the guy eating the burrito. I've seen multiple videos of these influencers that are like, look, I ate this XYZ, and it could even be like rice, and they're just like, look, my blood glucose went up. Don't eat rice.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, do they really believe this? Because
People
it's like,
do believe it.
It's like, how can you
People
present
do.
yourself as someone who's knowledgeable in the field and then go there with these kind of like hogwash clickbait video?
Well, I know a guy who's a pretty big influencer, and a glucose monitor company approached him, said they give him 10 grand if he made a post.
Oh, surprise, surprise.
So
Look at that.
they're all these influencers who are wearing that, they probably got paid to do that post. So
No conflict of interest there.
No, not
Might
at
as
all.
well follow those influencers. And
Well, and it's like, it's marketing. There's another woman, her name's the Glucose Goddess. So obviously very credible, because we're just humans, and what do we know? She's a goddess. Yes, we're not even a demigod, a goddess.
Well, I'm working my way up.
Yeah, we have a long ways to go. But she says that blood glucose is poison. It's toxic. It's going to kill you. And her whole thing is like, you have to make sure no matter what, that you don't let your blood glucose level spike. And thank God for this goddess, because she also just so happens to sell. Thank goddess.
Thank goddess for this goddess.
That she also happens to sell a pill that is called anti-spike.
Oh, interesting.
So she's created the problem, And then she then gets everyone afraid and then sells you the solution to it after she's created a following. So
and just FYI, guys, I don't know about that product, but I guarantee you that it has berberine in it. If you are interested in actually regulating your blood sugar externally with a natural product, just look up the compound berberine. It's got a nickname of nature's Ozempic.
Boom.
Yeah, so I would guarantee that the primary ingredient in that individual's product is berberine. So there you go. You can go buy it bulk free.
Berberine.
Or buy it much cheaper than I'm sure she's marking it up for in her
I'm sure.
proprietary blend, which we've talked about in our supplement episode.
Right. I'm sure we should look it up. I'm sure it's a proprietary blend.
Of course.
And I bet it has ashwagandha in it.
Of course, 100%, which is a great thing. But
magnesium maybe, and then berberine.
Yeah.
So you can do that and ignore the food you eat, or you can just try to make some better food choices. You can make sure you're exercising a few good days a week.
Just move
and also
your body.
Sleep is super, super important. I mean, just regulating like glycemic effect in your bloodstream. Sleep is just crucial. And so if you go through any sort of like sleep deprivation, even just for a short time, it can like double your body's inability to process glycogen properly. So sleep is super important. It just always comes back to all this.
Sleep regulates our endocrine or our hormonal system.
Yep.
Insulin is a hormone, all that good stuff.
Just keeps coming back to this. It's like guys, like don't get so caught up in emotional sensationalism, dogma. It's like eat healthy food, the best of your ability. Keep a lid on it. I recommend tracking your calories. It just sets you free. And then lift weights and train and live your life and just don't worry about it. Like if you have a problem, then fine, worry about it. But if you don't have a problem, then why fucking create one?
Yeah, don't listen to their dogma. Listen to our dogma.
Listen to our dogma.
Exactly. And even if you just measure your food, I mean, I was kind of talking about this. Like, look, I get maybe not counting calories is the thing for everybody, but just, again, another metric is measuring food. And that can be done with eyeballing like fist for your carbohydrates, palm for your protein, thumb for your fats, very common visual measurement. So I think just like paying some type of attention to the amount of food that you're eating to not overconsume. But I would agree, getting into the calorie game is going to be your best bet.
So interesting study was that they were on this sort of blood glucose, carbohydrate kick. Is eating a lower carbohydrate diet better for weight loss? I think it's a really interesting topic. Is eating a lower carbohydrate diet better for weight loss versus a non-lower carbohydrate diet? So this study group called Medrixciv. That's what it's called.
Yeah.
You've heard of them?
Oh, absolutely. I read their studies all the time.
So I'll post the link to the study in the show notes, but you guys can check it out for yourself. But basically, the skinny on it is, no pun intended, they had a controlled group where they controlled a group with everybody ate the same amount of calories. Everybody ate the same amount of protein, and everyone exercised the same amount. And to the point to where they actually provided the food to these people as well. So truly controlled it. It wasn't like what they call a free living study where you're supposed to just eat this like, for example, You Are What You Eat documentary is a free living study.
Yeah, exactly.
So we have to just take your word for it. Most people are full of shit. But this one, they gave the food to the participants and they controlled it against someone on a 50% carbohydrate diet, which is actually normal, believe it or not. 50% of your calories from carbohydrate is considered more normal.
Yep.
And they went 10%, 15%, 20%, 25%, and 30%. So they had all these different groups, and each person had 10% of their calories from carbohydrate. Another group had 15% of their
so they
total
went
calories.
with it.
And they tracked them all over, I think, a 12-week period to see if everyone eats the same amount of calories, but just lower carb versus a slow incline of higher carbohydrate, is that actually better for weight loss?
Right.
So as long as you controlled for calories and controlled for protein, does the carbohydrate that you're eating matter? So at the end of the study, it turns out there's no significant difference.
No significant difference.
Doesn't matter if you are 10% carbohydrate or if you're 40% carbohydrate. What matters is how many calories did you eat in a 24-hour period?
Number one.
Get your protein levels up, and then exercise. And as long as you can do that, whatever floats your boat, whatever tickles your fancy, 10%, 20%, 30%, 40% of your total calories from carbs, taster's choice on that one. But as far as what's going to improve your insulin sensitivity, lower your body fat levels, improve pretty much all biomarkers, it's not how many carbs you eat up to 50% of your total calories. It's your total calories.
Total calories.
And your protein levels and your exercise levels.
Looky there.
So I thought that was pretty interesting.
It is. What a modern day conundrum we've created for ourselves by having all the food we can want.
Just and then happen to not let ourselves eat it.
I know, exactly. And be like, well, that's actually the issue that's killing us.
Yeah.
Number one cause of death in the world.
Yeah.
You know, like.
So I think the takeaway, guys, is like, everybody kind of has to learn for themselves, I think.
100%.
I can listen to a podcast and I can truly agree with everything I'm hearing, but then have to learn on my own. So do what you got to do. Yeah. But I think what you should be tracking is how much you're eating, what time you go to bed and wake up, how many days a week you're exercising,
how many steps you take.
Yeah, I think
outside of exercise.
Yeah, I think that if you eat single ingredient foods, if 75% of what you eat is single ingredient food, so lean proteins, fruits and veggies, complex carbohydrates,
the perishables at the outside edge of your grocery store, not the middle aisle stuff.
Things that have one ingredient.
Yeah,
rice,
fruit.
It's 100% apple. It's a single ingredient.
I love those 100% apples, man. Those are my favorite.
Not a proprietary blend of apples, of apple stuff. But if 75% of the food you eat is single ingredient foods, you lean more into the protein stuff.
Yeah.
You get some weights in your hands at least 3 days a week.
Swim, bike.
Honestly, you're
gonna be pretty
set.
set.
What the fuck do you need a glucose monitor for, man?
In other words, if you're wearing one right now, I just want you to rip it out of your arm.
Yeah, just rip a gaping hole of flesh off of you.
No, but it's true. It's just not inherently necessary. And it almost goes back to like the genetic conversation about being concerned with your genetics should only come to be if you're truly fulfilling your potential with the things you can control, right? Then I guess you can bark about your genetics if you've done absolutely everything before then. And I think it's kind of the same here. It's like, start with the fundamentals. I always use this analogy of like, you have to bake your cake before you can ice it. And baking the cake is moving your body, exercising, fundamentally eating well, getting some good sleep, drinking some water. Mm-hmm. Those simple things are going to take care of a majority of your health concerns. And if you need to or want to start icing your cake with adaptogens, or I would even say checking your heart rate, but even then I would say the glucose monitor is it's not even on the cake.
Yeah, like if you're going out and drinking a 12-pack, that multivitamin the next day is going to be
exactly. So
yeah, there's a lot we need to clean up first before any of the tip of the iceberg type of stuff is going to make any noticeable change in your life. So always go after the core of it. But that was fun. That was a good episode. I think that we'll do another episode strictly on hormones, and we talked a lot about insulin. We talked a lot about that kind of stuff today. So I think we'll do another episode in the future on just dialing in exactly what these hormones are, what they're responsible for, how they're influenced.
Yeah, how they don't hurt you.
Yeah. But all right, so that was episode 19 of Coach's Corner with Justin and Ethan. We'll catch y'all next time.
Peace.